Rin Morrigan frowned at the flickering holo display, the hazy outlines of a derelict space station looming outside the cracked viewport. He was pretty sure the engineers who built this bucket of bolts hadn't intended for it to be floating lifeless, like a cosmic corpse in the middle of nowhere. But intentions were like space dust, everywhere and good for nothing. "You sure this isn't some kind of cosmic joke?" he asked, tapping at the unreliable console with fingers accustomed to coaxing life out of dead machines. "Why? Afraid you'll find your long-lost twin skulking about," crackled the voice of Haley, the ship's AI, through the static-choked intercom. "Maybe a zombie. If I meet another version of myself, I'll shoot first and ask questions never," Rin muttered, pulling on his helmet. The airlocks here were about as trustworthy as a politician's promises. "Oh, please. We both know you just bore him to death with your life story," the AI retorted with a tone that implied a bored yawn if only she had lungs. Rin grabbed his toolkit, the same one he'd been carting around for a decade. It was like an old friend, except it didn't borrow money or complain about the smell of burnt circuits. "All right, I'm off to go dance with the dead." The station's interior was a claustrophobic nightmare of narrow corridors and ominous silence, punctuated only by the faint hum of life support systems that just refused to give up the ghost. The place felt like a museum of bad decisions, each bulkhead and exposed wire a testament to poor planning and even worse execution. Rin sidestepped a floating piece of debris, probably once part of something important like a coffee machine. "If I find out this is all for a cup of space sludge, I'm gonna lose it." "Don't worry," Haley's voice crackled in his earpiece. "I'll still be here to comfort you. Or laugh." Probably laugh. He followed the station's crude map, which was less of a guide and more of a suggestion. It led him deeper into the labyrinth, past hatches that creaked ominously and doors that had given up the ghost altogether. Eventually, he reached a massive, rust-streaked door marked Restricted Access. Because of course, the universe's worst ideas always hid behind Do Not Enter signs. "Haley, got anything on what's behind door number 1? Only if you're into surprises." With a resigned sigh, Rin started hacking the lock, the process as thrilling as watching paint dry in zero-G. The door groaned open, revealing a cavernous chamber filled with more tech than a conspiracy theorist's wet dream. The centerpiece was a massive, alien-looking vault, carved with runes that seemed to pulsate with a life of their own. "Well," Rin said, stepping into the chamber, "I've found the mother lode of what the hell is this?" "Looks like a seed vault," Haley chimed in, her tone a mix of intrigue and disdain. "Congratulations, you've discovered ancient alien agriculture." Rin wandered between humming consoles and blinking lights, his engineer's mind racing. "It's a big, cosmic greenhouse." Only someone forgot to pay the gardener. He approached the vault, the runes glowing ominously. "I'll bet this thing has more safety features than a billionaire's mistress." "Let's hope it's as secure," Haley quipped. Rin tapped at the console hooked up to the vault. It spluttered to life, displaying a wall of alien text that made less sense than the lyrics to a pop song. An error message blinked aggressively, "Universal code for you're screwed." Haley," Rin said, swallowing hard. "I think we have a problem." "Is it the kind that involves running away really fast? Because I'm partial to those," she replied. "It's more of the oh crap it's gonna blow variety." The console was registering a series of malfunctions, and judging by the frantic beeping, none of them were good news. "Terraforming protocols initiated," the console announced in a cheery voice that suggested it was oblivious to the apocalypse. "Great," Rin muttered, jabbing at the controls. "Just perfect. Because, I really wanted to accidentally turn this sector into a nature reserve." He worked furiously, fingers flying over the console in a desperate attempt to override the system. All the while, the vault continued its ominous hum, like a giant beast waking up from a long nap and ready to stretch its legs. "Rin," Haley said, her usual sarcasm replaced by something resembling concern, "if you can't fix this, that vault's gonna vomit seeds all over the sector." "I'm aware, thank you," he snapped, feeling the cold sweat of impending doom trickle down his back. Does it come with an off switch or do I have to kick it? Try not to kick anything, unless you brought a bigger boot. The console beeped again, more insistent, more demanding. Rin cursed under his breath, feeling the weight of the universe's worst practical joke bearing down on him. I swear if I survive this, I'm writing a letter. To who? Anyone who'll listen. Good luck with that, Haley said dryly. The universe has a way of misplacing complaint letters. Despite himself, Rin chuckled, though it was more of a nervous bark than anything else. If this thing goes up, we'll be the first to enjoy a front row seat to an interstellar garden party. With us as the fertilizer, Haley agreed. The thought made Rin work faster, his mind racing through every trick he'd learned, or invented, over years of dealing with malfunctioning tech. He bypassed circuits, rerouted power, and even tried sweet-talking the console like a lover scorned. Finally, just as the vault's hum reached a crescendo that set his teeth on edge, the beeping stopped. The runes dimmed, retreating from their threatening glow. Override successful, the console chimed, almost disappointed. Terraforming protocols suspended. Rin let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding and sagged against the console. Holy hell, I did it. Congratulations, Haley said, her voice a mix of relief and mockery. You saved the universe from the horrors of rampant vegetation. Yeah, Rin grunted, eyeing the vault with a wary respect. But now we've got to make sure this thing stays asleep. And how do you propose we do that? Haley asked. By finding out who built this mess and ensuring they don't build another, Rin replied, his voice hardening with resolve. Because I'm pretty sure the universe doesn't need a sequel to this disaster. Good luck, Haley said, as Rin began gathering data, his mind already racing ahead to the next challenge. You're gonna need it. The airlock hissed ominously as it sealed shut behind him, the stale metallic scent of the derelict station clinging to his suit like an unwelcome reminder of the chaos that nearly unfurled. Rin exhaled, allowing himself a moment of reflection, or as much reflection as his cynicism would allow. You know, Rin said, flicking switches on his toolkit, if someone told me I'd be spending my day babysitting an alien garden, I'd have laughed in their face. And here you are, Haley's voice quipped in his ear, the galaxy's unlikeliest gardener. If this thing sprouts daisies, I'm quitting. Rin muttered as he floated back towards the airlock, the station's dim corridors stretching like a tunnel of bad decisions. You'll miss it, Haley retorted, the thrill of saving the universe from its own stupidity. I'll survive, Rin sighed, his eyes tracing the flickering lights that lined the walls. I've got a poker game with a bottle of whiskey back home that's just as thrilling. Cheap thrills are your specialty, Haley reminded him with a dose of artificial warmth. Rin smirked, allowing himself a small moment of pride. A specialty I'm quite proud of, thank you very much. As he floated, he considered the implications of the vault, the ancient, misguided attempt at terraforming that had nearly unleashed hell on the sector. It was a testament to the folly of beings who thought they could control the universe with a flick of a switch and a handful of seeds. You think the universe just likes screwing with us? Rin asked aloud, half expecting Haley to snicker in agreement. The universe, Haley replied with a tone that suggested an electronic eye roll, is too busy to screw with us. It just leaves us to screw with ourselves. Brilliant, Rin muttered as the airlock hissed open to welcome him back. Give sentience to a species and watch them fumble around like drunks at a wedding. An apt analogy, Haley agreed, her voice following him into the ship, except were the drunks and the weddings on fire. Rin chuckled despite himself, the absurdity of their predicament finally catching up to him. Well, here's hoping we don't burn down the galaxy before they cut the cake. The ship's lights flickered to life as Rin clambered aboard, the familiar hum of its engines a comforting lullaby. He leaned back against the door, surveying the chaos-strewn mess of his workstation. Wires and tools lay scattered like the aftermath of a particularly heated argument. You know, Rin said, the junkyard chic look really grows on you. Only if you don't mind tetanus, Haley retorted. Hazards of the trade, Rin shot back, settling into the pilot's chair with a groan. So where to next? Anywhere but here, Haley said, unless you're planning a second date with that vault. Pass, Rin snorted, setting the coordinates for the nearest station that wouldn't try to kill him. I like my dates a little less, potentially catastrophic. How dull, Haley replied, and here I thought you were all about the excitement. I save the excitement for weekends, Rin said, punching the thrusters. The ship lurched forward, leaving the derelict station, and its dangerous secrets behind. As the stars streaked past, Rin allowed himself a moment of quiet triumph. He'd managed to avert disaster, at least for now. But the universe was a big place, and he had no doubt it had more surprises in store for him. Surprises best tackled with a wrench in one hand and a sarcastic remark in the other. Here's to surviving another day, Rin muttered to himself, a small, weary grin tugging at his lips. Indeed, Haley agreed, her voice a quiet companion in the vast emptiness of space. With the ship on autopilot and the comforting hum of the engines lulling him into a false sense of security, Rin closed his eyes, knowing full well that his reprieve would be all too brief. Because in a universe that thrived on chaos, peace was just another illusion waiting to be shattered. Rin Morrigan sat back in the pilot's chair, staring at the blinking holo display. Stars streaked by like the universe was having a clearance sale on cosmic decor. Right, he muttered. Time to make some friends. He flicked switches, cursed at unresponsive buttons, and punched commands into the comm system. Static crackled through the speakers, the sound of the universe's indifference. Galactic Authority Central, this is Rin Morrigan, requesting immediate assistance. Over, his voice echoed in the cockpit, swallowed by silence. The send button blinked back at him, unimpressed. He leaned forward, trying again. Galactic Authority Central, do you copy? Nothing, not even a courtesy beep. Guess we're not on their Christmas card list, Haley quipped, her voice dripping with digital sarcasm. You'd think they'd at least pretend to care, Rin replied, irritation lacing his words. I mean, I'm only trying to stop a sector-wide gardening disaster. More like a planetary weed infestation, Haley corrected with a snort. They've probably got bigger fish to fry. Yeah. Like ignoring distress calls from lowly humans, Rin grumbled, feeling the familiar sting of humanity's place in the galactic pecking order, somewhere between space debris and a minor inconvenience. Rin tried a different frequency, one that was supposedly reserved for emergencies of the please don't let me die here variety. Galactic Patrol, this is Rin Morrigan. Urgent situation. Repeat, urgent. The response was underwhelming. All channels are currently busy, a bored automated voice finally droned. Please hold for the next available representative. Seriously, Rin said, almost laughing at the absurdity. We're about to get an interstellar florist apocalypse, and I'm on hold. You should have pressed 1 for customer service, Haley suggested. Maybe they'd send a pamphlet, probably titled DIY Intergalactic Disaster Management, Rin said, tapping his fingers impatiently. Complete with a complimentary shovel and seed packets. Don't forget the ceremonial watering can. He sighed, leaning back in his chair, contemplating the vastness of the galaxy and its utter disinterest in his plight. Humanity was hardly a blip on the cosmic radar, and Rin suspected even his best SOS wouldn't merit a footnote in the galactic logs. Guess we're on our own, Rin muttered, shutting off the comms. The quiet hum of the ship filled the void, a small comfort in the vacuum of space. Not entirely, Haley chimed in, her voice a steady presence in his ear. You've got me. Lucky me, Rin said, a wry smile tugging at his lips. A snarky AI is exactly what I needed. I'm the gift that keeps on giving, Haley shot back, her tone lightening the mood just a fraction. Rin stood, stretching his legs in the cramped cockpit. All right, let's make sure that vault stays quiet, he said, more to himself than anyone else. Can't have it spewing alien weeds all over the place. He moved to the rear of the ship, where the data he'd gathered from the station lay scattered across his makeshift workstation. It was a mess of alien runes, half-deciphered logs, and enough technical jargon to make a scientist weep. Simplify this for me, Haley, Rin said, waving a hand at the chaos. What's our next move? Well, Haley began, her voice laden with mock wisdom. First, try not to die. Second, figure out what those runes are babbling about. Helpful as ever, Rin replied dryly, flipping through the holo documents with a determined frown. Some of the symbols were starting to make sense, little by little. Looks like they were trying to terraform the sector, but something went wrong. No kidding, Haley commented. They forgot to read the instructions. Or skipped the part about catastrophic failure, Rin added. Whatever they did, it's spreading. We need to figure out how to stop it. Easier said than done, considering our lack of galactic support, Haley pointed out. Seems like we're the only ones putting the fun in terraforming malfunction. Rin chuckled, despite the impending doom. Just another day in paradise. He returned to the cockpit, only to find the holo display flashing an alert. What now? He muttered, tapping at the console. The screen flickered to life, showing a map of the sector. A series of red dots blinked ominously across the expanse, each one representing an area of abnormal activity. The influence of the vault was spreading, like a bad case of interstellar acne. Looks like our little gardening project is going viral, Haley remarked, her tone sardonic yet oddly comforting. Great, Rin said, his stomach nodding with unease. If we don't stop this, the whole sector's gonna look like a bad acid trip, which might be an improvement, Haley quipped, depending on your taste in landscaping. Rin studied the map, focusing on the red dots that seemed to pulse with malicious intent. We've got to find the source and shut it down, he said, determination hardening his voice. Any bright ideas? Haley asked, her tone encouraging yet skeptical. Just one, Rin replied, setting the course for the nearest affected area. We follow the trail of breadcrumbs and hope it doesn't lead us into a wood chipper. Sounds promising, Haley said, her words laced with dry amusement. Let's hope it doesn't end with us becoming compost. As the ship powered forward, Rin felt the weight of their mission settle over him like a heavy cloak. The universe might not care about humanity's struggles, but that wasn't going to stop him from trying. And maybe, just maybe, he'd managed to save a corner of the galaxy from turning into one big cosmic flower bed. Here's to defying odds, Rin muttered, fingers dancing over the controls. And flipping the universe the bird, Haley added, her electronic voice a beacon of solidarity in the vast, uncaring expanse. As they approached the first red dot on the map, Rin's eyes narrowed. The ship's scanners began to pick up readings that were both unfamiliar and unsettling, a mix of energy signatures that defied easy classification. It was like the vault had vomited its contents into the fabric of space, creating a new kind of cosmic soup. Getting anything useful? Rin asked, keeping an eye on the scanner as it struggled to digest the information. Depends on your definition of useful, Haley replied. If by useful you mean incomprehensible, then yes. I'm going to assume that's a no, Rin said, gripping the controls as they closed in on the anomaly. Let's take a closer look. The ship slid into position, hovering near the epicenter of the disturbance. Rin activated the external cameras and the feed displayed on the holo screen. What he saw was both fascinating and terrifying, a swirling mass of energy, shimmering with a chaotic blend of colors that seemed to shift with a life of their own. That's one hell of a light show, Haley remarked, her tone caught between awe and trepidation. Looks like a rave gone wrong, Rin muttered, eyes glued to the spectacle. Any idea what's causing it? Not a clue, Haley admitted. But it's definitely not on the tourist brochure. Rin leaned closer to the screen, his engineer's mind churning with possibilities. Could be an unintended side effect of the vault's terraforming protocols, he speculated. Some kind of feedback loop. Or someone forgot to unplug the cosmic disco ball, Haley suggested, ever the cynic. Rin didn't reply, his mind racing as he considered their options. Whatever this was, it wasn't going away on its own. And with the galactic authorities busy being indifferent, it was up to him to stop it from spreading. All right, let's try something stupid, Rin said, his tone decisive. I'm going to run a diagnostic scan, see if we can't pinpoint the source. Stupid is our specialty, Haley agreed, her voice tinged with approval. Running the scan now. As the ship's systems whirred into action, Rin watched the data stream across the screen. Numbers and symbols danced in an incomprehensible ballet, but slowly, patterns began to emerge. There, Rin said, pointing at a cluster of readings that stood out from the rest. That's got to be it. Looks like you're onto something, Haley said, her words carrying a hint of admiration. Now what? Now we poke it with a stick and see if it bites, Rin replied, a grin tugging at his lips despite the danger. He activated the ship's remote probes, sending them out to gather more data. The probes darted into the swirling energy, tiny beacons of hope in the chaotic storm. Probes are in position, Haley reported, her voice steady. Let's see what they find. As the probes transmitted their findings, Rin felt a spark of optimism. Maybe, just maybe, they could figure this out. But the moment was short-lived as the holo display began flashing with a new alert. Oh, Rin said, eyes widening as he read the message. Looks like the probes triggered something. The swirling energy began to shift, coalescing into a more defined shape. A shape that looked alarmingly like a boundary, a barrier of some kind forming around the anomaly. Looks like we hit a nerve, Haley remarked, her tone dry. Great, Rin said, glancing at the holo display as it updated with the new information. Any idea what that barrier is? Not yet, Haley replied, but it's definitely doing something. The barrier shimmered and the energy within intensified, pulsing with a rhythm that seemed almost alive. All right, Rin said, his mind racing. Let's see if we can disrupt it, maybe break the feedback loop. And if we can't, Haley asked, her voice calm but probing. Then we hope it doesn't turn us into mulch, Rin replied, setting the ship systems for an energy pulse. Ready to give it a jolt, born ready, Haley said, her tone brimming with confidence. Rin activated the pulse, and the ship shuddered as it released a burst of energy toward the barrier. The display flickered as the energy collided with the anomaly, causing ripples to cascade across its surface. Did it work? Rin asked, watching intently. The barrier shimmered, the energy within fluctuating with an almost musical quality. But then slowly the anomaly began to stabilize, the chaotic pulses becoming more rhythmic, more contained. Looks like it, Haley said, a note of triumph in her voice. Whatever you did, it seems to be holding. Rin exhaled, feeling a rush of relief tempered by caution. They'd managed to contain the anomaly, at least for now, but the vault's influence was still spreading and they were far from finished. All right, Rin said, determination renewed. On to the next red dot. We've got a garden to prune. As the ship powered away from the anomaly, Rin couldn't help but feel a flicker of optimism. They were making progress, slow and dangerous as it might be. And with any luck, they might just manage to stop the vault's influence before the whole sector went to seed. One down, a dozen more to go, Haley said, echoing his thoughts. Let's hope the next one's as cooperative, Rin replied, setting the ship's course for the next anomaly. With the universe still largely indifferent, Rin knew they had a long road ahead. But at least they were moving forward, and that was something. Here's to making a difference, Rin said quietly, eyes fixed on the stars. Even if no one notices, Haley added, her electronic voice a steadfast companion in the journey ahead. As they left the anomaly behind, Rin felt a sense of purpose and solidarity with his AI partner. Despite the odds, despite the indifference of the galaxy, they were doing something that mattered. And maybe, just maybe, they'd managed to keep the universe from becoming one big, unwelcome garden. The derelict space station loomed ahead like the universe's most unwelcoming haunted house. Rin Morrigan guided his rickety ship toward it with the kind of care one might use when disarming a bomb, cautiously sarcastic. His mind was a roiling storm of problems needing solving, and unfortunately, he had the wrong kind of umbrella. Home sweet home, Haley's voice crackled through the intercom, her digital presence as snarky as ever. Or at least until the life support finally gives out and the whole place becomes a cosmic tomb. Morbid, but accurate, Rin replied, flicking switches with the practiced ease of someone who lived in a constant state of controlled chaos. "Let's see if we can't keep the old girl breathing a little longer. You're quite the optimist, you know that." Haley's tones were as dry as the Sahara, if the Sahara were a perpetual cynic with an attitude problem. Rin navigated the ship toward the station's docking bay, which was about as inviting as the gaping maw of a space kraken. The airlocks on this station had a reputation: unreliable, untrustworthy, and prone to malfunction at the least convenient moments. A bit like dating in your 30s, Rin thought. As the clamps engaged and the ship settled against the station with a shudder that set his teeth on edge, Rin made his way to the control panel. The holo display was alive with data streams and blinking alerts, each one more annoying than the last. "All right, let's see what fresh hell awaits us today," he muttered, scrolling through the readouts. "Anomaly containment is holding steady," Haley reported, her voice coming through the intercom with a reassuring hum. "For now, anyway. Good, because I have a feeling we're about to get a visit from the neighborhood watch. The Galactic Authority finally giving us the time of day?" Haley asked, her words dripping with sarcasm. "Worse. Seems we've piqued the interest of a certain alien corporation," Rin said, scanning the new data. "They've got a vested interest in that vault we just poked. Fantastic. Now we're on the radar of the galactic equivalent of a ruthless corporate overlord. What's their name?" "Zylox Systems," Rin replied. "I'm sure they have the friendliest customer service department in the galaxy." "Should I prepare a welcome basket?" Haley asked, implying it might as well include a ticking bomb. "Let's see what they want first," Rin said, as a notification blinked on the holo display, a transmission request. "Looks like they're knocking." With a press of a button, the screen flickered to life, presenting the smiling visage of an alien who looked like it took its fashion cues from a lizard-themed masquerade ball. Or maybe a reptilian used car salesman. Hard to tell. "This is Grith Zarn, representative of Zylox Systems," the alien announced in a voice that was somehow both oily and metallic. "We've noticed your interesting activity around the vault. Care to explain?" "Ah, Grith," Rin said, flashing a grin that could cut glass. "I'm just a humble pilot trying to keep a cosmic disaster from eating my lunch." "Your interference is noted," Grith replied, eyes narrowing to slits. "The vault is private property belonging to Zylox Systems. Your actions could be considered intrusive." "Intrusive, considerate, they're practically synonyms, aren't they?" Rin countered, leaning casually against the console as if he wasn't facing down an alien corporate shark. "Your humor is as charming as your unauthorized activities are concerning," Grith said, the smile of a predator who smelled blood in the water. "We will be dispatching a team to oversee the situation." "Can't wait to roll out the red carpet," Rin replied, inwardly cursing their timing. As if he didn't have enough on his plate. The transmission cut off, leaving Rin staring at the blinking holo display. He ran a hand through his hair, feeling the weight of the universe pressing down on him. "Looks like we're about to have company," Haley said, her tone a mix of apprehension and amusement. "Think they'll bring snacks, probably more like lawsuits and veiled threats," Rin muttered, eyes scanning the data streams for any sign of incoming ships. "We need a plan. Preferably one that doesn't end with us as corporate collateral damage," Haley added. Rin considered their options, his engineer's mind whirring into overdrive. The vault was a ticking time bomb, and Zylox's interest was the lit fuse. He needed to stabilize the situation before things escalated further. "Let's double-check the energy pulse diagnostics," Rin said, pulling up the relevant data. "If we can reinforce the containment field, maybe we can buy enough time to figure out what the hell we're dealing with." "On it," Haley confirmed, her presence a comforting constant amidst the chaos. Running diagnostics now. The station's systems hummed with activity as Rin and Haley worked, data scrolling across the holo display in a digital dance of ones and zeros. Rin's fingers flew over the controls, his mind focused on the task at hand. "Energy levels are fluctuating," Haley reported, her tone brisk. "We might be able to stabilize with a synchronized pulse, but it's a long shot." "Long shots are our specialty," Rin replied, calibrating the ship's energy reserves. "Let's give it a go." He initiated the pulse, feeling the familiar shudder of the ship as it discharged a concentrated burst of energy toward the vault. The holo display flickered, and Rin held his breath, waiting for the system's response. For a moment, nothing happened. Then gradually the data streams began to stabilize, the erratic fluctuations smoothing into a steady rhythm. "Looks like we've bought ourselves some time," Haley said, a hint of relief in her voice. "Let's hope it's enough," Rin replied, though his mind was already racing ahead, considering their next move. With the immediate crisis at bay, Rin turned his attention back to the looming threat of Xylox systems. The corporation would undoubtedly send their team soon, and Rin needed to be prepared. He wasn't about to let some alien conglomerate bully him into submission. "What's the worst that could happen?" Haley mused, echoing his thoughts. "They could shut us down, confiscate the vault, and leave us stranded in deep space," Rin offered, ticking off the possibilities like a demented grocery list. "Optimism really isn't your strong suit, is it?" "Not when the universe keeps dealing me a hand full of jokers," Rin said, setting the ship's systems to standby as they awaited Xylox's arrival. As they waited, Rin's mind drifted to the vault itself. The structure was an enigma, its purpose and origin shrouded in mystery. Whatever it was, it held the potential to reshape entire worlds if it didn't destroy them first. And if Xylox systems had a stake in it, there was no telling what their intentions might be. "Do you think Xylox knows what the vault is really capable of?" Rin asked, voicing the question that had been nagging at him since Grith's transmission. "Hard to say," Haley replied, her tone thoughtful. "They might have some idea, but corporations aren't exactly known for transparency." "True," Rin agreed. "They're more interested in profit margins than planetary safety." "Then let's make sure their plans don't come at the expense of everyone else in the sector," Haley suggested, her words carrying the weight of shared resolve. Rin nodded, feeling a sense of solidarity with his digital companion. They might be outgunned and outnumbered, but they weren't out of the fight yet. Not by a long shot. As the station's sensors picked up the approach of Xylox's team, Rin squared his shoulders and prepared for the confrontation to come. The galaxy might be a cruel and indifferent place, but he wasn't about to let it grind him down without a fight. "Time to greet our guests," Rin said, his voice steady and determined. "And show them this garden's got thorns," Haley added, her electronic voice brimming with defiance. As Xylox's ship docked with the station, Rin took one last look at the holo display before stepping into the docking bay. The universe might not care about the little guy, but Rin Morrigan wasn't going to let that stop him. Not today. The airlock cycled with a hiss and a clang, and Rin found himself face to face with a trio of Xylox operatives. They were clad in sleek corporate armor that screamed, "We mean business," in a way that only overpriced uniforms could. The lead operative, a tall alien with the kind of sharp features that could double as a can opener, stepped forward. "Rin Morrigan, I presume." "You presume correctly," Rin replied, crossing his arms and giving them his best "I'm not impressed" look. "To what do I owe the pleasure?" "We're here to assess the situation and ensure the safety of Xylox's assets," the operative said, his tone clipped and professional. "Your interference is not authorized." "Funny, I don't recall needing permission to prevent a sector-wide catastrophe," Rin shot back, his words as sharp as his gaze. The operative's expression remained impassive, but Rin could see the flicker of annoyance in his eyes. "This is a delicate situation, Mr. Morrigan. We would appreciate your cooperation." "Cooperation's a two-way street," Rin replied, holding his ground. "I'm not about to let you waltz in here and make things worse." The operative's lips tightened, but he nodded curtly. "Very well. We will proceed with our assessment. I trust you will stay out of our way." Rin gave a non-committal shrug, letting them interpret it however they liked. As the operatives moved past him, Rin watched them with a mixture of wariness and determination. He might be up against a corporation with more resources than he could dream of, but he had something they didn't, a vested interest in not letting everything go to hell. As the Xylox team began their work, Rin returned to the control panel, his mind already working on potential contingencies. The vault might be a powder keg, but with a little luck and a lot of stubbornness, he might just keep it from blowing up in their faces. "What's the plan?" Haley asked, her voice a steady companion amidst the uncertainty. "Keep an eye on Xylox, make sure they don't do anything stupid," Rin replied, his focus unwavering. "And if they do, be ready to step in." "Sounds like a plan," Haley agreed, her tone full of confidence. As Rin watched the Xylox operatives go about their business, he felt the weight of the universe pressing down on him once more. But he also felt a spark of defiance, a refusal to let the galaxy grind him down. "Here's to making a difference," Rin muttered, echoing his earlier words. "Even if no one notices," Haley replied, her voice a beacon of solidarity in the vast, uncaring expanse. Rin nodded, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. They might be up against the odds, but they weren't out of the fight yet. And as long as he had breath in his lungs and circuits in his ship, he wasn't going to stop until the galaxy was a little less indifferent. The Xylox operatives had been crawling all over the derelict space station for what felt like an eternity, and Rin Morrigan was starting to wonder if they'd brought a tent and campfire for the long haul. They moved with the purposeful efficiency of a group that had done this 100 times before, probably because they had. Each was armed with a scanner that looked like a cross between a hairdryer and a ray gun, evidence of their intent to dissect the station and catalog its secrets. "Think they'll find anything of interest?" Haley's voice crackled through the intercom, her sarcasm somehow cutting through the static. "Only if they are interested in dust and disappointment," Rin replied, watching the operatives' holo-displays flash with data he couldn't see but could only imagine was terminally mundane. "But I doubt they are into collecting antiques." The lead operative, Can Opener Face, seemed especially keen to dig into every crevice the vault had to offer. Rin shadowed him from a distance, hands shoved in his pockets like he was out for a leisurely stroll rather than trying to keep a step ahead of corporate espionage. "Mr. Morrigan," Can Opener called out without even turning around. "Our scans indicate significant energy fluctuations from the vault. Care to explain why you're asking me instead of your own equipment?" Rin shot back. "I thought you brought the premium subscription." A muscle in Can Opener's jaw twitched. "These readings are highly irregular. It's almost as if someone tampered with the containment field." "Imagine that," Rin said, feigning innocence with a smile that could wilt flowers. He could practically hear Haley rolling her digital eyes from the ship. It was clear Xylox had more than a passing interest in the vault. The operatives had exchanged enough meaningful glances to suggest they weren't just here to take selfies with a derelict space station. Rin's gut told him they had plans beyond a corporate audit. "Any bright ideas on how to handle these clowns?" Rin muttered, crossing back to his control panel. "How about we show them what happens when their fancy tech gets an accidental power surge?" Haley suggested, her voice oozing mischief. "Oops, did we fry your equipment? Our bad. If only I could get away with that," Rin sighed. "But I've got a feeling Xylox doesn't accept oops as a valid excuse for sabotage." "You're no fun," Haley teased, but there was a thread of genuine concern in her tone. "Seriously though, what's the plan?" "First, we figure out what they are really after," Rin said, watching the operatives on the holo display. "Then we gather enough evidence to hang them with their own red tape." He knew Xylox wanted the vault's terraforming capabilities, turning barren worlds into lush paradises or, if they had their way, into corporate-owned playgrounds. But what they didn't seem to grasp was that the vault was a temperamental beast, as likely to sprout a jungle as it was to blow a planet to bits. "Ever tried hacking corporate comms?" Rin asked, an idea forming in the back of his mind. "Is that a rhetorical question?" Haley replied, sounding almost offended. I'll have you know I once intercepted a diplomatic transmission from the Galactic Authority just for fun. Then I'd say it's time to flex those digital muscles, Rin said, a grin creeping across his face. If we can tap into Xylox's comms, we might just find out what they're planning. On it, Haley chirped, and Rin could almost picture her rolling up her electronic sleeves. The station hummed with activity as Haley hacked into the operative's comms, the digital equivalent of picking a lock with a paperclip. Rin twiddled his thumbs, pretending to be engrossed in his own holo display as the Xylox team continued their investigation. After a few tense moments, Haley's voice returned, smug satisfaction evident through the static. Got it. Shall we see what skeletons are in their closet? Play it, Rin said, shifting on his feet as if he was about to hear the juiciest piece of gossip in the galaxy. The audio crackled to life, a distorted voice filtering through. Ensure the containment field is destabilized. The vault's terraforming capabilities are our primary objective. We must acquire it before Morrigan interferes. Rin's eyes widened. Well, they certainly aren't subtle, are they? You'd think they'd at least try to speak in code, Haley quipped. What's next? A PowerPoint presentation on their evil plans. Rin rubbed his chin thoughtfully. Xylox's intentions were crystal clear now, and he had the evidence he needed to put a serious kink in their plans. But first, he had to get the hell out of Dodge before they realized he was onto them. Time to make ourselves scarce, Rin decided, already moving toward the airlock. But not before leaving a little surprise. Going out with a bang, Haley teased, already prepping the ship for departure. Just a friendly reminder not to trespass, Rin said, fiddling with the controls. With a few deft keystrokes, he set the containment field to emit a series of harmless but blinding pulses, enough to create chaos without causing real harm. Let's see how they handle a light show. As he stepped into the docking bay, the station's lights flickered ominously. The Xylox team looked around in confusion, their scanners blinking uselessly against the interference. Rin had to suppress a laugh as Can Opener Face shouted orders, his calm demeanor unraveling like a cheap sweater. Time to go, Rin muttered, tapping a sequence into his wrist console to prepare for a quick exit. Is it wrong to say I'm going to miss their company? Haley joked, opening the airlock with a hiss. Only if you enjoy watching paint dry, Rin replied, slipping back into his rickety ship with a final glance at the chaos he'd left behind. The ship detached from the station with a low groan, one of its engines sputtering like a disgruntled cat before righting itself. As they moved away, Rin took a moment to admire the light show, flashes of blue and white illuminating the station like a rave gone horribly wrong. Good luck explaining that one to your bosses, Rin muttered, already plotting their next move. So, where to next? Haley asked as the stars streaked past like cosmic debris. We need to get this evidence to someone who can actually do something about it, Rin said, pulling up the Galactic Authority's notoriously unhelpful contact interface. And maybe, just maybe, find a way to keep Xylox from turning the vault into their personal science experiment. Haley's voice softened slightly, a rare moment of sincerity cutting through the static. You think they'll actually listen to us? Rin chuckled, though there was little humor in it. I've got a better chance of winning a beauty contest, but it's the only chance we've got. Never pegged you for the pageant type, Haley teased, her tone returning to its usual irreverence. You're lucky I don't have legs to strut, Rin replied with a grin, settling into the pilot's chair as the ship hurtled through space. With Haley's help, they'd managed to escape the corporate clutches of Xylox, but the game was far from over. Every move they made was a gamble, each decision a roll of the dice in a universe that seemed keen on stacking the odds against them. At least Rin had Haley, the sarcastic voice in his ear keeping him grounded. And as the ship sped toward the uncertain future, he found a strange comfort in the chaos. After all, what was life without a little danger? Here's to the underdogs, Rin muttered, feeling the familiar hum of the ship beneath him, a reminder that even the most rickety vessel can still sail. Against all odds, Haley agreed, her voice a steady beacon amidst the stars. And as they disappeared into the vast expanse of space, Rin couldn't help but think that maybe, just maybe, they stood a chance. Rin Morrigan leaned back in the rickety pilot's chair, the synthetic leather creaking in protest like the joints of an old man who just learned he was out of prune juice. The ship hummed with a discontent that matched his own, a reminder that he was more running away from a problem than towards a solution. Xylox was on his tail, and the vault systems were like a needy pet, threatening to implode if not handled with care. Not to mention the Galactic Authority, which was about as helpful as a chocolate teapot in a heat wave. "Got anything useful yet, Haley?" he asked, breaking the silence in the cockpit, not that it was ever truly quiet with the constant rattling of the ship. Haley's voice crackled through the intercom, laced with an irreverence that somehow felt comforting. "Well, if by useful you mean another complaint from the Authority about unauthorized comm activity, then sure, I've got loads. Other than that, zip, zilch, nada. I'm shocked. I thought for sure our glowing reputation would have them rolling out the red carpet." Rin sighed and rubbed his face, feeling the stubble, a reminder that he hadn't seen a razor in days. The life of a fugitive wasn't exactly conducive to self-care. "Maybe try a different approach. Like, I dunno, beg," Haley suggested, the sarcasm light but palpable. "I hear they love a good sob story. Very funny," he muttered, though a part of him wondered if that wasn't the worst idea in the universe. If only we had time for a little groveling between dodging corporate killers and trying not to explode. The ship lurched slightly as it entered a debris field, a graveyard of forgotten technology, and the occasional frozen sandwich, cosmic litter at its finest. Rin adjusted the controls, weaving through the detritus with the ease of someone who'd done it 100 times. It wasn't much, but it was one of the few things he could control, unlike everything else in his life. "Okay, new plan," Rin said, striking the armrest with determination. "We need backup. I'm talking the kind you can't buy with corporate cash." Appealing to the human spirit. "How quaint," Haley replied. "Got anyone in mind, or are we just going to plaster help wanted signs across the galaxy?" "Funny you should ask," Rin said. He leaned forward to access the ship's comm system, which, like most things on the ship, was about as reliable as a politician's promise. "I'm thinking of reaching out to the old network. Desperate times, desperate measures, huh?" Haley mused. "Sure you want to dig up those skeletons? Some of them might still have teeth. Pretty sure I've got more to fear from the living," Rin said. "Besides, what's a little human solidarity in the face of impending doom?" "Heartwarming," Haley said, the sarcasm practically dripping through the speakers. Rin smirked. "Keep that up and I'll start to think you've got a soul in there. Don't spread that rumor. I've got a reputation to maintain," Haley replied. Rin busied himself with the interface, which was a bit like trying to milk a cow through a keyhole, extremely frustrating and bound to leave you with a mess. The network he was thinking of was a ragtag bunch of human engineers, a sort of underground collective spread across the galaxy. Most of them had been burned by corporations one way or another, just like him. If anyone could help him get out of this mess, it was them. "All right, sending out the call," Rin said, pressing a series of buttons with a sigh that could have blown out a star. "Here's hoping someone's listening." The message was simple. A brief explanation of the situation, a request for help, and the promise of a few drinks if they ever met up in person. It wasn't much, but if he'd learned anything over the years, it was that the best way to get humans involved in anything was to offer booze and a good story. As the message zipped through space, Rin settled back into the chair, which protested even more this time, as if trying to say, "You thought this was going to be easy." He watched the stars blur past, his mind racing faster than the ship could ever hope to. "So what's plan B if no one bites?" Haley asked, breaking the silence. "Who says I have a plan B?" Rin replied with a smirk. "And here I thought you were supposed to be the brains of this operation," Haley teased. "Shows what you know," Rin chuckled. "My backup plan involves a bottle of whiskey and a lack of self-preservation." He only half joked. There was something strangely liberating about knowing you had nothing left to lose. It was the kind of freedom that came with a side of existential dread and a garnish of desperation. Ior's passed with nothing but the static of space to keep him company. It was enough to make even the most patient man want to tear his hair out, but Rin wasn't exactly known for his patience. He busied himself with maintenance on the ship, tightening bolts, and cursing their refusal to comply as if sheer willpower could keep the damn thing from falling apart. Then, just when he thought he'd have to resort to screaming into the void, the comm system pinged with a response. Rin lunged for the console like a man who just stumbled across water in the desert. "Well, what do you know?" Haley said. "Maybe your luck hasn't run out entirely. Don't jinx it," Rin shot back, reading the message with a growing sense of relief. "Looks like we've got a bite." The message was from an old friend or acquaintance, depending on how generous one wanted to be. Miles Dagan, a grizzled engineer who'd once helped him rig a reactor to explode without taking out half a city block. If anyone could help him now, it was Miles. "Looks like I owe someone a drink," Rin muttered, sending a quick reply to set up a meeting. "And maybe a few apologies. You." Haley sounded genuinely surprised. "Never thought I'd see the day. Don't get used to it," Rin said. "I'll save the groveling for when there's more on the line than my pride." The coordinates came through, and Rin set a course for their rendezvous point. A small outpost on the edge of nowhere, the kind of place people went when they wanted to be forgotten. It was a haven for folks like him, those who'd slipped through the cracks of society and made a life among the stars. The ship shuddered as it changed course, the engines groaning in protest. Rin patted the console as if to reassure it, though he doubted the mechanical beast cared much for his affections. "Just hold together a little longer," he murmured. "We're almost to the fun part." "Define fun," Haley quipped. "Living long enough to regret our decisions," Rin replied. It wasn't much, but it was something, a flicker of hope in an otherwise bleak galaxy. The Xylox Corporation might have resources and men, but they lacked one crucial thing: the stubborn tenacity of a human with nothing left to lose. As they neared the outpost, Rin's fingers danced over the controls, running through a checklist of systems that barely seemed to function on a good day. The ship was a patchwork of repairs, each more desperate than the last, but it was his, and he'd be damned if corporate goons were going to take it from him. "Got visual on the outpost," Haley announced as the hodgepodge of shipping containers and scrap metal came into view, a testament to human resourcefulness, or lack thereof. "Looks like the usual suspects are already here." "Good," Rin said. "Then let's not keep them waiting." The ship docked with a shudder that Rin hoped wasn't a sign of impending doom. As he stepped onto the outpost, the air was thick with the scent of engine oil and spice, a strangely comforting aroma that reminded him of home, or as close as he ever got to one. Miles was waiting for him, leaning against a rusted barrel with the casual demeanor of someone who'd seen it all and survived to tell the tale. "Rin Morrigan," Miles drawled, a grin splitting his weathered face. "Still alive, I see. Still kicking," Rin replied, clapping him on the shoulder. "Thanks for answering the call. Wouldn't miss it for the world," Miles said. "Heard you've got a bit of a situation." "That's putting it mildly," Rin said, leading the way to a makeshift table that had seen better days. "Xylox is after the vault, and I've got a bunch of evidence they'd rather stay buried." Miles whistled, low and impressed. "You sure know how to find trouble. Trouble finds me," Rin corrected, though he couldn't deny he had a knack for attracting chaos. "Think you can help?" Miles rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "Depends. What's in it for me, besides the warm, fuzzy feeling of sticking it to the man?" Rin asked, arching an eyebrow. Miles chuckled. "Never been one for fuzzy feelings, but I do love a good challenge." "Then you're in luck," Rin said, sketching a quick plan on the tabletop with a piece of chalk. "Here's what I'm thinking." As they huddled over the makeshift map, Rin couldn't help but feel a spark of optimism. It was a fragile thing, easily crushed beneath the weight of the universe's indifference, but it was there nonetheless. With a little luck and a lot of stubbornness, they might just pull this off. So, what's the plan? Haley asked, her voice in his ear like a particularly sarcastic guardian angel. Plan A is to not die, Rin said. Plan B is to take those corporate bastards down with us. Ambitious, Haley remarked. I like it. Rin smiled, his confidence bolstered by the presence of allies, even if they were the kind that came with more baggage than a spaceport luggage carousel. Together, they might just stand a chance against the odds. As the stars glittered overhead, Rin felt a strange sense of hope. The universe was vast and uncaring, but right here, in this forgotten corner of the galaxy, they had a fighting chance. And sometimes, that was all you needed. Rin sat at the rickety table, tracing the map with a finger like a general planning a war campaign, if generals relied on half-baked plans and a prayer. Miles scratched his chin, a gesture that suggested either deep thought or a sudden itch. So this is the plan, huh? Miles said, his voice a gravelly rumble. Disrupt Xylox's grip on the vault and live to tell about it, basically, Rin replied. We disrupt their operations, expose their dirty laundry in the galactic court, and hope they don't decide to blast us into space dust. Ah, the good old hope and a gun approach, Miles chuckled. Been a while since I played that game. Not as fun as it sounds, Rin quipped, fidgeting with a bolt that had no business being loose. But it's all we've got. The outpost's mess hall, a term used generously, was filled with the hum of conversation and the distant clatter of machinery. Engineers and outlaws, a collection of those who'd slipped through the cracks, gathered around the map. Haley's voice crackled through Rin's earpiece, a sardonic angel perched on his shoulder. Ready to play Robin Hood in space, she teased. More like Robin Hood with a death wish, Rin muttered. But yeah, something like that. The plan was simple, at least on paper. They'd hit Xylox where it hurt, right in their corporate pride, by exposing the evidence Rin had uncovered. A galactic trial was a tall order, but desperate times called for desperate measures. The old network had its connections, and if they could secure an audience, they might just stand a chance. All right, folks, Rin said, addressing the motley crew. We've got one shot at this, so let's not screw it up. A chorus of skeptical snorts greeted his words. Confidence wasn't exactly in high supply, but desperation was a powerful motivator. Let's get to work, Rin continued. Miles, you're on systems. We need the holo displays running smooth as butter in a zero-gravity kitchen. Miles asked with a grin. Piece of cake, or space cake. Exactly, Rin replied, rolling his eyes. Just make it happen. As Miles headed off, Rin turned his attention to the rest of the group. The rest of you, double-check the comm systems. We need to broadcast this proof across the galaxy before Xylox realizes what hit him. The crew dispersed, each with a task that would hopefully lead to the downfall of a corporate giant. Rin remained at the table, the weight of his decision pressing down with the subtlety of a neutron star. Feeling the pressure yet? Haley asked, her voice a mix of mockery and genuine curiosity. Only enough to crack a planet, Rin replied. But hey, it's not like I had plans this weekend. The Ior slipped by in a haze of preparations and last-minute adjustments. Rin's mind raced with possibilities, most of them ending with him and his crew as cosmic debris. But there was no backing down now. Finally, the systems were as ready as they'd ever be. The evidence Rin had gathered, reports, logs, and schematics proving Xylox's nefarious activities, was loaded and primed for transmission. Let's do this, Rin said, his voice steady despite the chaos inside his head. The crew gathered around the holo display, a patchwork creation that flickered with data and uncertainty. It was time to make their move, and Rin could only hope they'd live long enough to regret it. Broadcasting in 3, 2, 1, Miles announced, his fingers dancing over the controls with the grace of a pianist on a caffeine high. The data streamed through space, a digital arrow aimed at the heart of Xylox's operations. It wasn't just about winning a battle. It was about showing the galaxy what humanity was capable of, good and bad. Rin watched the transmission progress, each percentage point ticking upwards like the countdown to a bomb. The evidence would reach the Galactic Tribunal, a body known more for its bureaucratic red tape than swift justice, but it was their only shot. "And now we wait," Haley said, her voice echoing Rin's own thoughts. "Yeah," Rin replied. "Now we wait." Waiting was the worst part. Every second felt like an eternity, a lifetime compressed into heartbeats. Rin's mind wandered to the what-ifs, the scenarios that no amount of planning could predict. "What do you think's gonna happen?" Miles asked, leaning back in his chair with the casual confidence of someone who'd been there, done that, and bought the space t-shirt. "Best case, they haul Xylox to court and we get to say 'I told you so,'" Rin said. "Worst case, we end up as Stardust." Miles grinned. "I've been worse places. You have a pretty low bar," Rin pointed out. "Hey, if you keep expectations low, you're never disappointed," Miles said with a shrug. The comm system buzzed, a jarring sound that snapped Rin back to reality. He lunged for the console, his heart pounding with a mix of hope and dread. "It's from the tribunal," Haley announced, her voice laced with anticipation. "Let's see what they have to say," Rin said, his fingers hovering over the controls like a gambler at the roulette table. The message was tersely formal, typical of bureaucratic communication. But the gist was clear. They'd secured a hearing and Xylox was being called to account for their actions. "Well, I'll be damned," Miles said, a slow smile spreading across his face. "We actually did it. Don't start celebrating yet," Rin cautioned. "This is just the beginning." The tribunal's hearing was set for the next rotation, a whirlwind of legal jargon, and posturing that Rin could only hope to navigate without getting skewered. They had their foot in the door, but whether they'd be welcomed or thrown out was anyone's guess. "Guess it's time to polish our courtroom manners," Rin said, trying to inject some levity into the tense atmosphere. "Let's just hope they don't mind a little rough around the edges," Miles replied, his grin never wavering. As the crew prepared for the trial, Rin found himself facing a new kind of battle, one fought not with weapons but with words. The stakes were high, and the outcome uncertain, but one thing was clear. Failure wasn't an option. The outpost buzzed with activity as they readied themselves for the hearing. Rin paced the narrow corridor, his mind a jumble of arguments and counterarguments. The evidence was solid, but Xylox wouldn't go down without a fight. "You ready for your big moment?" Haley asked, her voice a steadying presence in the chaos. "As ready as anyone can be when facing corporate annihilation," Rin replied. "Think they'll let me wear a space suit to court?" "Probably not," Haley said. "But who knows? Maybe they'll make an exception for your charming personality." Rin chuckled, the sound more nervous than amused. "Yeah, I'll charm them right out of their seats." As the hour approached, Rin gathered his crew for a final briefing. The makeshift war room was alive with tension, each member acutely aware of what lay ahead. "All right, folks," Rin said, looking each person in the eye. "We've done the hard part. Now we just need to convince the tribunal we're not a bunch of lunatics with a vendetta." "Speak for yourself," Miles quipped, eliciting a few chuckles. "Let's stay focused," Rin continued, feeling the weight of leadership on his shoulders. "Stick to the facts and let the evidence speak for itself." The crew nodded, determination etched into their faces. They weren't just fighting for themselves. They were standing up for every person Xylox had wronged, every life torn apart by corporate greed. As they boarded the ship for the short trip to the tribunal station, Rin felt a strange sense of calm settle over him. He'd been here before, on the brink of disaster with everything to lose, but this time was different. This time, he wasn't alone. The ship docked with the tribunal station, a gleaming testament to intergalactic bureaucracy and misplaced priorities. Rin steeled himself for the battle ahead, knowing that the fate of more than just his crew rested on the outcome. "Here goes nothing," he muttered, stepping onto the station with the confidence of a man who had everything to prove. The courtroom was a cold, sterile place, designed to intimidate and impress. Rin's eyes swept over the gathered officials, their expressions ranging from disinterest to outright disdain. He forced himself to focus, to remember why they were here. The hearing began with the usual pomp and circumstance, a tedious parade of formalities that did little to ease Rin's nerves. But when the evidence was presented, he saw a flicker of interest in the eyes of the tribunal members. "This evidence," the head of the tribunal said, adjusting his spectacles with the precision of a man who'd spent too long staring at screens. "It's troubling, troubling." Rin echoed, unable to keep the incredulity from his voice. "It's a bloody outrage." The head of the tribunal blinked, clearly unaccustomed to such bluntness. "Yes, well, we'll take it under advisement." Rin bit back a retort, knowing that pushing too hard could backfire. Instead, he let the evidence speak for itself, each damning piece a nail in Xylox's coffin. As the hearing dragged on, Rin felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, they'd pull this off. Maybe justice would prevail, and Xylox's stranglehold on humanity would finally be broken. But optimism was a dangerous thing in a universe that thrived on chaos. As the hearing drew to a close, Rin couldn't shake the feeling that the real battle was just beginning. The crew gathered one last time, their expressions a mix of exhaustion and determination. They'd done all they could, and now it was up to the gears of galactic justice to grind in their favor. "So, what do we do now?" Miles asked, his voice heavy with the weight of the unknown. "Now," Rin said, a wry smile tugging at his lips. "Now we wait." Again, it wasn't much, but it was all they had. The universe spun on, uncaring and vast, but for the first time in a long time, Rin felt a glimmer of hope. They'd stood against the tide, fought for what was right, and in the end, that was all anyone could ask for. As they waited for the verdict, Rin knew one thing for certain: whatever happened next, they'd face it together. And sometimes that was enough. Rin stood at the entrance to the tribunal's courtroom, trying to muster the kind of confidence that could pass as legal acumen. It was like preparing to wrestle an octopus. Sure, you might manage to grab a tentacle, but you're still gonna end up wet and embarrassed. Miles was at his side, fiddling with his holopad and looking as calm as someone who had absolutely no idea what they were doing. "Remember," Rin said, running a hand through his disheveled hair, "we're not lunatics with a vendetta, just moderately sane people with a very specific grudge." "Right," Miles replied, nodding sagely as if he were some kind of philosophical sage and not a guy who'd once gotten locked in a bathroom for 2 hours. "Stick to the facts, don't punch anyone, and maybe they won't throw us in a cell." "That's the spirit," Rin muttered, pushing open the door. Inside, the tribunal chamber was about as welcoming as a dentist's office. Sterile, impersonal, and filled with people who seemed to enjoy watching others squirm. The members of the Galactic Tribunal sat behind a long, imposing desk, their expressions ranging from bored to uninterested. At the center, the head of the tribunal, a man with the charisma of a particularly dull rock, adjusted his spectacles and peered down at them. "Rin Morrigan," the head intoned, as though he was reciting a grocery list. "You stand here today to present your case against Xylox Corporation." Rin stepped forward, feeling every eye in the room on him. He might have preferred a firing squad to this. At least with a firing squad, you knew what was coming. "That's right," Rin said, clearing his throat. "We're here to shine a light on the kind of corporate skullduggery that would make even the shadiest back-alley dealer blush." The head of the tribunal gave a non-committal grunt, which Rin took as a cue to continue. "The evidence we've gathered shows Xylox's extensive involvement in illegal activities, tampering with anomaly containment, exploiting resources, and frankly, treating humanity like we're nothing more than an infestation." "Ah, yes," the head said, expression finally breaking into a semblance of interest. "The evidence." Miles, taking this as his cue, fumbled with the holo display, which flickered on with a whine that suggested it was considering unionizing. Data scrolled across the screen, a damning list that detailed Xylox's crimes in cold, hard numbers. "I'm sure you're all familiar with Xylox's public persona," Rin went on, gesturing to the screen. "But behind the scenes, they are less like a benevolent corporation and more like a rabid pack of hyenas, tearing apart anything they can sink their teeth into." The head of the tribunal adjusted his spectacles again. A habit Rin suspected was more about intimidation than any real trouble with his vision. "And what do you propose we do about it?" "Well," Rin said, spreading his hands wide like a particularly sarcastic messiah, "I propose we hold them accountable. You know, make them stop before they blow up half the galaxy or turn us into their personal playthings. Either would be a win." The room was silent, the tribunal members exchanging glances that Rin hoped were thoughtful rather than homicidal. The evidence was solid, but bureaucracy had a way of twisting truth into a pretzel. And what of the evidence regarding the potential catastrophe at the derelict space station? One of the members asked, a woman with a voice so dry it could have started a desert. "Ah, yes, the ticking time bomb," Rin said, unfurling another set of data across the display. "If Xylox continues their little science experiment, we're looking at an energy implosion that could make a supernova look like a birthday candle." A ripple of discomfort passed through the tribunal. Even hardened bureaucrats didn't like the idea of becoming cosmic dust. "You're saying Xylox's activities present a direct threat to galactic stability?" The head pressed, leaning forward slightly. "Direct as a punch to the face," Rin confirmed. "And just as pleasant." The head leaned back, fingers steepled like an old-world villain plotting to tie someone to train tracks. "Very well. We will deliberate on this matter." "Deliberate quickly," Rin advised, "or you might be deliberating in a debris field." The tribunal nodded, their collective gaze weighing heavily on Rin as if trying to decide whether he should be applauded or institutionalized. Rin turned and returned to his seat beside Miles, his heart pounding like an overcaffeinated drummer. "So do we just sit tight while they decide if we're heroes or morons?" Miles asked, his voice low. "Pretty much," Rin replied, rubbing the back of his neck. The weight of the moment pressed down on him, tangible and suffocating. "But hey, at least we've got great seats for the end of the world." The tribunal whispered among themselves, their voices a low hum of debate. Rin kept his eyes on the holo display, watching the evidence scroll by in a loop. It was all there, plain as day, but he knew logic and justice didn't always see eye to eye in a universe so vast and indifferent. Finally, the head of the tribunal cleared his throat, a sound like gravel under a boot. "We have reached a decision." Rin straightened, a flicker of hope sparking in his chest. "The evidence presented is compelling," the head continued, "and it is clear that Xylox's actions cannot be allowed to continue unchecked." A ripple of relief spread through Rin's body, a momentary release from the crushing weight of uncertainty. "Therefore, we will move to sanction Xylox Corporation, halting their operations and initiating a full investigation into their practices." Rin let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding, a smile tugging at his lips. "Well, I'll be damned." Miles clapped him on the back, grinning from ear to ear. "Looks like we might just live to see another terrible day." "But," the head added, a note of warning in his voice, "this decision also means we will be keeping a close eye on all involved parties, including you, Mr. Morrigan." "Wouldn't have it any other way," Rin replied, meeting the head's gaze with unwavering resolve. The hearing concluded, and the tribunal members filed out with all the enthusiasm of people headed to a tax audit. Rin and Miles were left standing in the empty chamber, the enormity of what they'd accomplished slowly sinking in. "So," Miles said, "what now?" "Now," Rin replied, "we celebrate, preferably with something strong enough to strip the paint off a hull." "Sounds like a plan," Miles agreed. "Though maybe we save it for when we're not on a station filled with people who might still want to chuck us out an airlock." "Good point," Rin said, leading the way back to the ship. He couldn't shake the feeling that they'd managed to pull off something truly remarkable or incredibly stupid. As they walked, Rin's mind drifted to thoughts of the future. They'd done what they set out to do, but he knew this was only a single battle in a much larger war. Xylox would fight back, corporations always did. But for now, they had a victory, however small, and he intended to enjoy it. Back on the ship, the crew gathered to hear the news. Rin delivered the verdict with a grin, watching as relief and excitement spread through the group. It wasn't often they had cause to celebrate, and he was determined to make the most of it. "It's not every day you stick it to a corporate giant and live to tell the tale," Rin said, raising a makeshift glass of what barely passed as celebratory drink. "Here's to us, and to not ending up as cosmic debris." The crew raised their glasses, laughter and banter filling the cramped quarters. It was a moment of levity in a galaxy that rarely offered such kindness, and Rin savored it for all it was worth. Haley's voice crackled through the intercom, a welcome intrusion. "So, you managed to not ruin everything. I'm impressed." "Thanks for the vote of confidence," Rin replied, rolling his eyes. "I'll add it to my resume, not completely inept." The ship hummed with a rare sense of ease, a respite from the usual chaos that dogged their every step. They'd earned this moment, fleeting though it might be, and Rin intended to hold onto it with both hands. As the celebration wound down, Rin found himself staring out into the void, the stars a tapestry of light against the black expanse. The galaxy was vast and uncaring, but for once he felt a sense of belonging, however temporary. "Do you think this changes anything?" Miles asked, joining him at the viewport. "Maybe," Rin replied, a sardonic smile playing on his lips. "Or maybe it's just another day in the universe's ongoing comedy. But at least we're still part of the punchline," Miles said, clinking his glass against Rin's. "Yeah," Rin agreed, feeling a strange mix of hope and cynicism. "At least we're still part of the punchline." And sometimes, in a universe that thrived on chaos and indifference, that was the best anyone could hope for. The aftermath of the tribunal hearing had the place buzzing like a nest of hornets after someone decided to poke it with a stick. News spread faster than a space plague, and suddenly, Rin Morrigan found himself an unlikely hero. For a guy who'd spent most of his life trying to avoid attention, this was a bit like having the spotlight turned on you during an embarrassing sneeze. As he and Miles shuffled out of the courtroom, they were met by a throng of reporters, each one more eager than the last to wring a headline out of the events. Rin had never seen so many people care about anything he did well ever. "Mr. Morrigan, how does it feel to take down Xylox?" shouted one journalist with a microphone that looked suspiciously like a hairdryer. "Like I need a drink," Rin replied, trying to brush past without making eye contact. Haley's voice crackled in his earpiece, full of mischief. "Our Rin, rubbing elbows with the galactic elite. Next, you'll be telling me you're running for office. Just what the universe needs," Rin muttered under his breath. "Me as a politician. The only thing I'm running for is the nearest exit." The reporters were relentless, swarming him like flies on a fresh corpse. One of them, a particularly persistent fellow with a nose that could double as a docking bay, thrust a holo recorder in Rin's face. "What does this mean for humanity's place in the galaxy?" Nosy McDockingBay asked. Rin paused, thinking for a moment. Humanity had been the galactic equivalent of the smelly kid in class, the one no one wanted to sit next to but everyone loved to gossip about. Now, they'd actually done something noteworthy, assuming you considered sticking it to corporate overlords noteworthy, which Rin did. "I'd say it means we move a step up the ladder from infestation to irritation," Rin answered. "But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Yesterday, we were nobodies, and tomorrow we'll probably still be trying to keep our ships from falling apart mid-flight." The crowd didn't seem to mind the cynicism. If anything, they lapped it up like a dehydrated dog finding a puddle. There was something about a scrappy underdog story that got people going, and Rin was reluctantly at the center of it. Miles elbowed him, grinning like they'd just won the galaxy's worst lottery. "You're a regular celebrity now. Maybe we should start charging for autographs." "Sure," Rin agreed. "Right after we start charging for the privilege of being shot at and nearly blown to bits." In the chaos, Can Opener face pushed through the crowd, his expression a mix of begrudging respect and annoyance. "Guess I'll be seeing a lot more of you, Morrigan. You know how to sweet-talk a guy," Rin shot back, smirking. "Guess that means I'll have to work on my charm." "Good luck with that," Can Opener face said dryly, disappearing back into the throng. As they finally broke free from the media circus, Rin and Miles made their way back to the ship. The rickety vessel looked more welcoming than ever, its usual creaks and groans a comforting reminder of reality. "Home sweet home," Rin said, climbing aboard and feeling the familiar vibration of the engines ticking over. "Who knew this heap would be the site of our biggest win?" Miles shrugged, tapping away at his holopad with the casual air of someone who spent more time in virtual space than real space. "As long as it keeps flying, I'm happy. Low standards, my friend." "That'll keep you sane in this galaxy," Rin replied, patting the ship's wall like it was a faithful old dog. Haley's voice piped up again, teasing yet supportive. "You do know this isn't the end, right? Xylox isn't just going to roll over and play dead." "Yeah, I figured," Rin said, settling into the pilot's seat. "But for once, let's enjoy the fact that we're not entirely screwed." "Just mostly," Miles added, still fiddling with his holopad. Rin chuckled, pulling up a holo display of their trajectory. "Only mostly." The ship lurched into motion, the debris field around the station scattering in their wake like cosmic confetti. It was a bumpy ride, as always, but it was theirs. As they navigated through the mess of forgotten technology, Rin couldn't help but reflect on the absurdity of it all. They'd gone up against a corporate giant and somehow walked away without being vaporized. That was something. Later, they found themselves in the outpost's mess hall, surrounded by a motley crew of misfits and exiles, each with their own reasons for being on this floating hunk of metal in the middle of nowhere. It was loud, chaotic, and smelled vaguely of burnt protein rations. Rin raised a drink, some dubious concoction that tasted like engine oil and regret. But it would do. "To us," he said, glancing around the table at the faces of those who'd somehow become his family. "We might be idiots, but we're idiots who managed to not die today." The group laughed, clinking glasses with varying degrees of enthusiasm. It was moments like these, rare and fleeting, that made the universe's indifference bearable. A chance to forget the endless void outside and pretend, just for a second, that they were more than specks of dust on a cosmic breeze. "Think they'll really go through with it?" one crew member asked, a wiry man named Jax who always looked like he was planning something. "Sanctioning Xylox." "They'd better," Rin replied, leaning back in his chair. "Or I'll be back at that tribunal to personally suggest a few alternative uses for their gavels. You'd think with all the advancements in technology, they'd have figured out how to treat us non-corporate types better." Haley chimed in from Rin's earpiece. "Advanced tech, same old stupidity," Rin said, sipping his drink. "You can build a ship to jump light years, but you can't find a way to make people less idiotic." The conversation drifted, as conversations do, from the serious to the ridiculous. Tales of misadventures, near misses, and improbable escapes. Each story was a reminder that they were still here, still fighting, and still capable of laughing in the face of a universe that seemed hell-bent on swallowing them whole. As the night wore on, Rin felt a strange sense of hope mingling with his usual cynicism. Maybe it was the drink, or maybe it was the fact that they'd somehow managed to do some good, however small. Humanity might be the galaxy's underdog, but today, they'd shown that even a species known for screwing things up could pull off a miracle now and then. Rin's thoughts were interrupted by a familiar buzz in his earpiece. "You sound awfully introspective," Haley observed, amusement in her voice. "What's gotten into you?" "Just thinking about how we managed to not be a total disaster for once," Rin replied. "And maybe, just maybe, we'll keep it up." "Optimism. From you?" Haley laughed softly. "Must be a sign of the apocalypse, or the best joke the universe has pulled yet," Rin agreed, grinning. The hours slipped by in a blur of revelry, and eventually the mess hall began to empty. One by one, people drifted off to whatever passed for sleep in the cramped quarters of the station. Rin lingered, lost in thought, until only he and Miles remained. "You think we've really made a difference?" Miles asked, his voice quiet in the stillness. "Hell if I know," Rin said honestly, "but we did something. And sometimes that's enough." They sat in companionable silence, the hum of the station a constant background to their thoughts. Outside, the galaxy spun on, vast and indifferent, but for once, Rin felt like a part of it. Like maybe, despite all the odds, they were carving out a space for humanity in the great cosmic dance. "Here's to whatever comes next," Rin said, raising his glass one last time. "Here's to us," Miles echoed, clinking his glass against Rin's. As they finished their drinks, Rin knew that the fight was far from over. Xylox would regroup, and the galaxy would continue to throw challenges their way. But for now, they had this victory and the knowledge that they could stand up to the giants and not just survive, but thrive. Tomorrow, they'd face whatever new chaos awaited them, but tonight was theirs. A moment in time, a brief triumph in a universe that rarely offered such gifts. And as Rin finally called it a night, he carried with him a sense of purpose. Humanity might be flawed, messy, and often its own worst enemy, but they were also stubborn, tenacious, and surprisingly resilient. In a galaxy filled with uncertainty, that was a power all its own. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for now they had each other, and that was enough. As Rin drifted off to sleep, he knew one thing for certain. They might not always win, but they'd never stop fighting. And in the end, that was what made them human.